Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my channel, and in today's video we're going to be learning about the war of the Second Imperial War, how it started, when did it start, and the events leading up to the end of the war. Also guys, there's going to be something going on this Wednesday, and this Wednesday is my birthday, and I'm not going to be having any videos posted because on that day I got a lot of things planned, but the day after my birthday I'll go back to posting, and then it will probably be the final part of this series. So we're going to get started off with the introduction of the war. The day that the war started was on November 17th, 2022, and this is how it started. After Alejandro Venezuela signed a contract with Grayton, Sarkiv of Tainarian was angry at Grayton for taking his new territory, and decided to go to war with Grayton, along with Tasmania for taking Milan away from them after the First Imperial War. Sarkiv decided to take his plan into action by sending troops to weaken the Gaussian border, which proved to be a success. And since the Gaussian military tried their best to defend the border and lost some of their military forces, they decided to flee towards Kandus to seek refuge. Also, since the Gaussian military fled to Kandus, Tainarian began to occupy the country. The country of Tasmania were setting up their defenses, and Grayton was preparing its troops for war. During this time, Kiv's next plan is to send in General Karko to lead his men to attack the Tasmanian defenses, while his next general, General Stalin, takes forces from Golan and Ukraine to set up ambush positions just in case the Graytonian troops arrive. The commander of the Tasmanian troops in Kandus, General Ishida, orders his men and the Kandustians to set up barricades along the west and set up trenches in the east of Kandus. Ishida's plan is to be prepared for two invasions, one from the Tainarians in Golan and one from the Phasidian army. The leader of just in case of Tainarian lands with Phasidian, then they will be ready just in case of the Phasidians get captured by Tainarian and the Tainarians start invading from the east. The leader of Tasmanian troops in Morlant, Colonel Itsaka, wanted his men and the Morlantian soldiers to set up defenses on the west border of Morlant and hold until the Tainarian troops advanced on their position. Grayton has been done with its training and began sending troops towards Tenyo. And while his troops were being sent to Tenyo, Franz Deinheimer sent a telegram to the leader of Phasidian, President Peter Feza, to hold defense and not engage in any conflict unless needed to or when his troops arrive. Alejandro of Madas begins to set up defenses just in case the Tainarians manage to pierce through Merlant. The Merlantian Revolution Group, led by Zhao Madong, are blending in the military until the moment for them to strike is ready. Zhao Madong's plan to strike is when the Tainarian troops reach Merlant. They would then turn against the Tasmanians and push them out, and once they got rid of Itsaka's forces, they would take Shunhei from his office and hold him prisoner. And as they are doing that, if the plan works, then they will allow Tainarian to continue their conquest to conquer Madas. General Ishida held defense for a few minutes, but he was losing a lot of men, so he radioed Hirohito for his orders, and Hirohito decided to let Ishida retreat his remaining group and set up defense in the city of Beijing. Since the Tainarians destroyed the border and Ishida's forces are falling back to Beijing, the Tainarian troops began to move towards the city. The Merlantian resistance saw Ishida retreating from the border, and Zhao Madong began to initiate his plan to fight the Tasmanians. But first, they would have to take care of the rest of the Tasmanian soldiers in Beijing first. So he ordered his comrades to strike. General Ishida reaches to the city of Beijing and puts all of his men on defense. The Tainarians, who saw the opportunity, began to advance, but since Ukraine lost a lot of men, they talked with General Stalin about them regarding their country while Golan goes on the offensive with them, and Stalin agreed to let them stay and defend their country as he and Golan continued. to invade the city of Beijing. The Melantian resistance waits for the arrival of the Tynarians to begin the ambush, and soon enough, gunfire from Tasmania soon a gunfire from Tasmania and Tynarania began. The resistance wanted to engage, but Zhao told them to wait until Ishida lost a lot of men. The firefight continued for another few minutes, and then Zhao gave the order to attack. Ishida forces were taken by surprise, and Tynarania began. And Ishida demanded a last stand between the two forces, and during the stand, the Ryo man sent his last call. All of Ishida's men were killed, and as for himself, he was kept alive to deliver a message to Emperor Hirohito, saying that Milan won't be under Tasmanian jurisdiction. Ishida refused to do so and decided to die with his men, so the Melantian resistance killed Ishida. They took down the Tasmanian flag and burned it, and as they were removing all Tasmanian influences and all Tasmanian influences, sorry guys, hold on. And properties, they also executed Shunhe as well. Zhao allowed Stalin to continue his mission to conquer Madas, but before he could, he contacted Tsar Kiev to commence the mission. Kiev replied to Stalin's request and decided to cancel it, and just help the Melantians fight the Tasmanians. Emperor Hirohito later heard about Ishida's death, and the demands from Zhao to remove his men from Milan from his country. Hirohito, filled with anger, wanted to teach Zhao's army a lesson, but agreed to remove his men from Milan and decided to hold defense in Kandahar. Grayton's forces managed to reach Kandahar and began making their way towards Golan and Ukraine to distract them while Tynarania confronts the face of Philidian and Median army. The Gratonian platoon sent to Tenyo is led by General Weber from the Second Salopine War. Weber's mission is to weaken Tyrania's allies and liberate Austria. Once he completes the mission, he will radio Dineheimer, and Dineheimer will deliver the final attack. The next day, Weber was going to launch the attack, but he received a call from Franz saying that he talked with Hirohito and their other allies, decided to block all trade routes to Milan and wait for a while. The countries that faced Philly and Madas began to blow up railroads to their countries and blocked all travel routes with military defenses. The goal for Grayton's victory is to weaken the Melantian and Tynarian soldiers by choking out their supply routes. It has been a week, and Franz Dineheimer's plan is working. They destroyed many supply trucks, convoys, and airdrops for the past 7 days, and Stalin's forces are getting very hungry and upset. It was only a matter of time for them to surrender. After a week of no food or water, General Stalin began to worry about his men's morale and decided to write a letter to Tsar Kiev about recommending a truce with their enemy into letting his men receive food and supplies. Stalin later received a letter from the Tsar saying that he would do his best with negotiating the allied countries about the truce. Tsar Kiev the next day began to write a letter to the leader of Grayton to declare the truce and discuss terms about the situation. After the letter was written. After the letter was written, he ordered it to be mailed to Grayton. Wait, hold on. Situation. After the letter was written, he ordered it to be mailed to Grayton. Kiev waited anxiously for Grayton's letter to arrive. And on Monday morning it arrived. Tsar Kiev immediately opened the letter and was relieved that Dineheimer accepted the truce, and followed Dineheimer's demands, which were to give Austria back to Grayton and send only food and water to his troops that would last him through the winter. And the truce will last till January. Kiev, relieved with joy, began to write a letter back to Stalin saying that the truce has started and would end in January. Since, since the 2 month truce has been declared, the Tyranian soldiers in Molan began to receive supplies of food and water to last them for another 2 months. And as they are receiving supplies, the Allies began to plan an attack on the Melantian and Tyranian forces before they reach Madas. Sarkiv is happy that the truce was working, but he also knows that his enemies will be prepared once the truce is over. So he started to secretly send telegrams to General Stalin to prepare flanking the Gratonian soldiers in Gostria, and then face Graton's allies after they wipe Graton's unit. Since Graton and Tynarian's allies are in a truce, the leader of Gostria, Alfred Eigner, who moved to Kaunas during the beginning of the war, heard that Graton regained Gostria from the truce terms, and decided to order his men to move back to Gostria to help the Gratonians occupy their home. Sorry guys for moving the phone. Weber was glad and then told Strunin to give the radio to sorry. Alfred met a group of soldiers near the town of Graz, which was occupied by Colonel Strunin. Strunin saw Alfred and let them in the town and radioed General Weber that Alfred and a group of men had managed to come back to their home. Weber was glad and then told Strunin to give the radio to Alfred. Alfred picked up the radio, and Weber asked him if his men were willing to fight for their home, and Alfred replied with a firm yes. Weber was happy and told Alfred thank you for reinforcing his men, and ended the call. Okay guys, so before we continue, I'm going to show you the newspaper that really started this war, and then I'm going to continue to the second part of the summary, along with also letters and things that started the truce. So after you guys have seen the article, we're going to get into the truce, or the letters that made the truce. In my universe, there has never been a record of any truce, and this was the first truce to ever be documented during a war and this timeline. So let's get to the truce. The letters that share this truce came from the first letter of General Stalin sent to Tsar Kiev on November 26, 2022. Stalin's letter to Kiev started out like this, quote, "Dear Tsar Kiev, this is General Stalin, and the reason I'm writing this letter is to ask you to help us with our situation. You have been sending us supplies, but no matter how many times you sent them, they haven't been delivered to us. And the reason because of that is our enemy has made a blockade to our supply routes, which is working on their side. My commander, I am begging you to make a negotiation with them so that we could survive. The Atlanteans have lost their supplies during the fight for the city, and they have been running on our rations, and as of now, we are low, and the men are fighting each other for survival. Please do something for us. Sincerely, General Stalin. Postscript, don't let us die like this." A day later, the letter was sent to Kiev, and Kiev replied to the letter on November 27, 2022. Kiev replied to Stalin's by saying, quote, "Dear General Stalin, I have received your letter, and I will do my best to negotiate with the enemy into letting me send you food and water. If things go sour, I want you to hold your ground and fight for our country and its empire that we're trying to create. The people are seeing me as a tyrant, and think that I am cruel for not caring about you and our friends on the field. I hope that our people won't kill me or my family. I will do my best to help. You have my word. If my family and I die, you will have ownership and permission to become the new Tsar. Tsar Kiev." After Kiev wrote his letter to Stalin, he began to write a letter to Franz Dinheimer of Graton to discuss terms for the truce. He was finished in order that the letter to Graton was delivered quickly. The letter was written to Franz Dinheimer, stated the following. Quote, "Dear Franz Dinheimer at Graton, I am sending you this letter to ask for a chance of negotiation. I am calling a truce between us and your allies. And my terms for truce are that I would like to give my men some food and water since you have managed to block my supply routes and destroy my convoys. I'm ready to hear your terms for your side of the truce. Sincerely, Sarkiv of Tanarania. Franz received the letter on the 28th of November, and after reading the letter, his first decision was to cancel the request, but he decided that this could work out for him because he could come up with terms for the truce, so he decided to reply to Kiev's request stating, quote, Dear Sarkiv of Tanarania, I have read the letter you have sent me. I have talked with my allies and their leaders. We decided to allow this truce, but on two conditions. The first condition is about my colony that you have taken from me, which was Gostria. If you and your allies give up Gostria and return it to me, I will allow your convoys of only food and water to pass unharmed. My second condition is that after your forces evacuate, you will allow us to occupy Gostria and Gostria throughout this truce. As a reminder, if these conditions or terms of our truce are broken, the truce won't be initiated. Yours truly, Franz Deinheimer. Postscript. This truce will last till January, so make it last while it counts. End quote. Deinheimer sent the letter back to Tanarania, and during the final hours of the day, Kiev received the letter and was relieved that the truce was made and followed Deinheimer's conditions to start the truce. Kiev sent a letter back to Stalin to let him know that the truth about the truce and how it was successful. His final letter to Stalin said, quote, General Stalin, I have sent a letter to Grayton after I have answered yours 2 days ago. I have a letter from Grayton that replied to my letter saying that the truce will start once I have followed his terms, which I did. I will soon send my convoys to you, so be alert. Some of the people who saw me as a tyrant began to cheer for me after I announced that the truce between us and our enemies, but there's still a group that disapprove of my actions and spread rumors that I was a coward. I don't really care what those people say because I'm doing what is right for my people and your men. And your men are all that I rely on. And I must show my people that by doing these things that I care for them and for them and you. I wish you and your men luck. Sincerely, Sarkiv. After the terms were met and agreed on, the truce began, and supplies for Stalin's men came flowing in. And like I said, this truce lasted till January. So basically, this is kind of like the first Christmas truce in Ottoman history. In real life, there was the Christmas truce of December of 1914 or 1914 between the Germans and the British, and that was the only documented truce in modern history, in real history, in modern history, because most wars were fought on Christmas Day, and it's hard to make truce during those times. So this was the first actual event. Now we're moving on. Okay guys, so we have learned about the truce and how it started, and giving a little brief summary of how it started. Sorry, I was cut off because there's a time limit that I have to record. So anyway, we are now moving on to the second part of this war. During the truce, after this truce was made, in Tasmania, Emperor Hirohito and his generals are having a meeting on how to recapture Milan from the Tanaranians and end Zhao before he declares his country independent. Hirohito wanted General Suho Ishikato to take the armor unit and flank the Tanaranian forces. Tanaranian forces in the northeastern section, while his second general, General Yuri Katsuya, would take a unit of men and attack the Tanaranians in Goland once the truce is over. It has been a few weeks since the truce began, and Franz Deinheimer has given General Weber a secret operation known as Nightfall. Weber's mission is to send troops to Goland and Ukraine to sabotage the enemy's communication lines without violating the truce. But even though he wanted He wanted to do it now. He was ordered to do it once the truce was over. As Tasmania and Great Britain prepared their offensive plan, the enemy forces have decided to settle down and take in the holiday since Christmas is just a few days away. It has been 3 days after Christmas, and all the nations knew that January is around the corner. General Weber had received a letter from Franz giving him orders to their forces to counterattack the Tyranians and invade the country of Mulat to get rid of Jean Madon. As for Madas and Faisofili, they are still holding defensive until there is a moment when the war continues, and if they are needed to help and end the enemy's power. Oh wait. Philip was preparing their troops. Jean Madon has sent a letter to King Harold to see if he could help him and his people be protected from Tasmania by their forces, and Harold replied saying that he will after the war was over. It is now January the 1st, and the nations are back into the fight. Half of Tasmania's forces, along with Faisofili's forces, have begun to counterattack the Tyranians and Walantians in the south of Condust, while the other half of the Tasmanian forces began to invade Goland. And as for the Tyranians and Golandians, they are holding Goland defensive while General Vladimir in Ukraine launches the attack on Gostria. The Tasmanians on the west side of northern Milan has managed to push the enemy towards one of the villages, and as for the east, Faisofilians and the other Tasmanian force has managed to push the enemy into another village, which means that the offensive on Malat is going well. Now the Tasmanian forces that are facing towards Golan, led by General Katsoya, begins their move to invade the country. Katsoya's forces have managed to capture Golan within a few minutes. The leader of the defense, General Stalin, surrendered because he saw that the Golanian population will be at risk of being extinct he surrendered and let the Tasmanian forces occupy Golan until the war was over. Now with Golan occupied by Tasmanian forces, General Vladimir began to invade Gostria to finish the Gratonian forces. General Weber heard about the Allied victory in Goland and began to move his forces into the trenches of the south side of Gostria to hold defense against General Vladimir's forces in Ukraine. The battle for Gostria also lasted for a few minutes, and it resulted with Vladimir's surrender. Jean Madon heard about the surrenders of Golan and Ukraine and decided to also surrender. Sorry, guys, I had to read the presentation. That's the only way I'm ever able to tell you guys about the war. All the leaders met in the city of Beijing to discuss terms of surrender and peace, and King Harold was there to help Mulat gain independence from Tasmania. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move on to the resolution. Since this was pretty quick, I didn't expect to finish this quickly, and we're going to go ahead and move on to the final part, which is the resolution of the war.